Good morning, everyone. My name is Ron Ashburn. I'm the Executive Director of the Association for Iron and Steel Technology, and I'm here to welcome you to the AISTech Town Hall Forum. This particular event marks a very special milestone this year as we celebrate the 20th anniversary of presenting the Town Hall Forum for the AIST membership. For a moment, I'd ask you all to think back 21 years ago. In addition to the horror of 9/11, there were more than 40 steel producers in bankruptcy right here in America, and our entire industry was in significant distress. Bethlehem, National, LTV, Republic, J&L, these are all names you may remember, and many more, all succumbed to the plight of unfairly traded imports, a lack of fixed asset investment, mismanagement, myriad other problems, many of which were self-inflicted. There was no direction, no strategy, and no rudder. And for many companies, there was a lack of leadership to articulate the vision for differentiation, the ultimate value proposition for any company in our industry. You either had to own the hole in the ground, the mining company, or the automobile company, in order to make a sustainable profit through the cycle in the steel industry back then. Sustainable companies, which is what we need. Sustainable companies need to be safely operated to protect their people. They need to reduce energy consumption and protect the environment. They need reliable supply chains. They need to relentlessly innovate their technology. They need to cultivate a workforce through culture, and they need to be profitable. Profit is ingredient number one, and it isn't a four-letter word. Sustainable companies need to do the right things all the time. 21 years ago, we didn't have this mindset, and the industry was going nowhere. It was this unparalleled time that became the genesis for this town hall. We needed leaders who were willing to articulate their vision for all stakeholders, including their employees, their suppliers, their customers, and their communities, not just their shareholders. We needed to address the challenges and the opportunities with real strategy and expertise, and we needed to be held accountable to everyone in our industry. As an industry, steel is significantly better off today than 20 years ago. And it is our hope and indeed our expectation to say the same thing 20 years from now. It takes great companies to do great things. And we expect each steel company to do its part towards becoming a sustainable enterprise. Our mission this morning is to tackle the key issues that march us closer to that goal. A few key announcements before we get started. In case we do need to evacuate this room, please exit to street level via the stairwells, which are inside this room, back by the doors in which you came. If needed, there are extra stairwells behind the stage. We will accept audience questions via the virtual platform Q&A function, or you can email your questions to townhall@aist.org. Again, that's townhall@aist.org. Please include your name and your company affiliation for your question to be considered. We will ask that you mute all cell phones, and the recording of this event is prohibited. One final note, there was mechanical problems with the aircraft with Nucor this morning, and Leon Topolian will not be able to join us. Nucor sends their sincere regrets. They very much wanted to be a part of the program this morning, and they wished the fellow panelists all the best with this morning's session. Before we introduce our panelists, I would like to acknowledge our exclusive Town Hall Forum sponsor. These events don't happen without your support. That's the Systems Group. We are indeed grateful to TSG for their support of this program. And I also want to thank our global conference sponsors that are with us throughout the year, including the Systems Group and Superbooth. We appreciate their support, so I'd like you all to give a nice, warm welcome and thank you for the Superbooth and the Systems Group. Now, to introduce our panelist is the person who had the vision for this event 21 years ago, and he continues to put forward the effort each and every year since to make it better. Please welcome our Town Hall Chair, Mr. George Koenig.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks, everybody, and good morning. And it's hard to believe that this has been 20 years since this was started, but I'd just like to have a show of hands. Who was in this room 20 years ago? So we got a bunch of hands going up, and it's unbelievable of how it's progressed and where we are today. And it was a situation where Ron very eloquently described of what the industry status was. And I was lucky enough to come up with the idea, why don't we have some type of town hall where we get the executives of the industry talking to the participants, talking to the people who are involved, talking to the doozers. And the comment was, George, if you can pull this together, let's go ahead and do it. And ironically, I moved forward, and then there was some issues with ISS that the board was mumbling, this wasn't approved, and I think Tom Russo, who was in the House today, said, George, I'll use my words, I got your back, go do it, I'll take care of the board. And the fact that that happened is another point of where we are today. So I went ahead, talked to Tom Usher at US Steel, Dan D'Amico at Nucor, Keith Bussey at Steel Dynamics, had total support. We had the first one with ISS, then entered Ron Ashburn and AIST. And they liked the success of the first event, and we agreed right on the onset that this is going to be part of the future of AIST, and we're going to continue to grow it. So I want to thank AIST, Ron Ashburn and their team for help growing this to the way it is today. So again, number one, it was a living room type setting, keep it fresh each year, and make sure that we have the preparation in place so it's a success. So we've got the Coca-Cola formula in place, it's working, and I'm so excited that we have a dynamic growth of the industry right now where we have such a fine group of panelists to discuss what's happening so that you're able to sit back, relax, and enjoy what's going to be a great morning and a good learning experience and worth your time. So please, learn, listen, and I think when you all walk out of here, you're going to be better than you were when you walked in. So it is my distinct pleasure to introduce the 2022 Town Hall Forum panelists. I ask you to hold your applause until each panelist is introduced. So starting on your left, we have John Brett, Chief Executive Officer, ArcelorMittal North America. Dave Burritt, President and Chief Executive Officer, United States Steel Corporation. Lorenzo Gonzalez, Chairman, President, and Chief Executive Officer, Cleveland Cliffs. Mark Millett, Co-founder, Chairman, Chief Executive. I'm going to start again. So with Leon, he messed everybody up this morning, but we're good. So we're going to go with John Brett, Chief Executive Officer, ArcelorMittal, Dave Burritt, Mark Millett, Co-founder, Chairman, and Chief Executive Officer, and Steelmaker of the Year from Steel Dynamics. Lorenzo Gonzalez, Chairman, President, and Chief Executive Officer of Cleveland Cliffs. Chuck Schmidt, President, SSAB Americas. And I want to thank the audience for being attentive as I made the announcement to catch my mistake. But nevertheless, let's give these guys a great round of applause. Lastly, our moderator, back for his 13th year as our town hall leader and moderator, a Phi Beta Kappa graduate of Haverford College and the University of Pennsylvania Law School. John is the money and politics editor for KDKA TV, a CBS affiliate in Pittsburgh. He is also an adjunct professor of public policy and politics at Carnegie Mellon University's Heinz College. We are pleased to have him moderate our town hall. Let's welcome John and give him a nice round of applause. Enjoy your morning, everybody. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning. You can do better than that. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Well, welcome to my hometown of Pittsburgh, where for nearly 28 years I've had the great privilege of being on nightly television, reporting on business, economics, government, and politics. It's a special honor and pleasure for me to moderate this 20th Town Hall for the Association for Iron and Steel Technology. This town hall, as you know, was the brainchild of George Koenig, and subsequently with the full support of Ron Ashburn and the AIST's incredible staff. After over 2 decades, it has become one of the industry's signature events, a chance to hear the candid comments of real insiders who sit on this platform every year. I can never say enough about George and Ron, with whom it has been a delight for me to work and learn from for over a decade. What terrific industry leaders. A round of applause for Ron and George. And also a special shout out for the incredible AIST staff, particularly 2 that I work with a lot, Chris McKelvey for logistics, and Sam Cusick, whose knowledge of the steel industry I tap at all hours of the day as I prepare for this program. As George mentioned, this is my 13th town hall program, and while many of today's panelists have been involved with earlier programs with me, this is the very first time we've had an all CEO panel. How awesome is that? These companies have leaders who are dynamic, creative, often gutsy, and yes, outspoken, who are committed and invested at a time when the steel industry faces many challenges. The pandemic and all its consequences, disruptions in the supply chain, climate change, demands for decarbonization, a war in Ukraine, sanctions against Russia, and workforce challenges as boomers retire and calls for diversity increase. As we will discuss, despite the challenges, these are companies in an industry that many believe, and I certainly believe, is well positioned for the future. This is no longer your father's or your grandfather's steel industry. It has become, or maybe that's the question we'll ask, has it become the high-tech, future-focused, cutting-edge, clean, green, digital steel operation of the 21st century? Let's go talk to the experts and find out. There we go. Gentlemen, it's great to be with you again. Thank you so much for taking part in this program. We really appreciate it. Each of your companies has had a terrific 2021 and have already hit the ground running in the first quarter of 2022. Congratulations to each of you on that. But I want to start by a larger focus on the industry as a whole, because each of you knows the steel industry inside out. A few years ago, I began by asking the panelists to really describe the state of the steel industry today in one word. That's a challenge. We're going to do that again today. This thing is going in and out on me. And then come back for a 60-second of why they chose that one word. So, let's begin with John Brett, CEO of ArcelorMittal North America. What's the word that describes the steel industry today?
Transformative.
Transformative. Great. Dave Burritt, President and CEO of U.S. Steel. What's that one word for you?
Bullish.
Bullish. Okay. Mark Millett, Chairman, President, Co-founder, and CEO of Steel Dynamics. What's that one word? Hyphenated. Go ahead, hyphenate your word.
Transformation.
I'm sorry, again.
Turbulent transformation.
Turbulent transformation. Okay. Lorenzo Gonsalves, Chairman, President, CEO of Cleveland Cliffs. What's that one word?
Fundamental.
Fundamental. Okay. And Chuck Schmidt, the president of SSAB Americas. What's that one word, Chuck? Reinvented. Reinvented. Okay, great. So let me go back to each of you and give you 60 seconds, and please don't take more than 60 seconds. Explain why you picked the word you did. John, you picked the word transformative. What do you mean by that? Yeah, there's a sound problem, guys. Where's our sound folks?
I'll try to talk about, okay, better.
Well, we just switched my mic. Let's see if we can get the panelists' mics. Try again, John.
Sure. Works. Yeah. Intermittent. I'll try to be loud.
No, that's not going to work. You know what we're going to do? I'm going to hand you my microphone, because maybe if the sound people say no, we'll stop. But go ahead, John.
Thanks, and see if this works better. So again, as the world is becoming increasingly concerned with matters of sustainability, steel is going to play an even more fundamental role in how we work, how we live, how we build, how we create. We believe that steel is going to be the foundation for net zero buildings, industry, infrastructure, transportation. So we're going to support society as it transforms itself. I think the good news for us is that steel is as relevant today as it ever has been. Another thing that's occurring is we're certainly transforming our steel, both the way we make it, its characteristics. Obviously, we'll hear a lot about it. It's cleaner, we consume less energy, we emit less CO2. It's becoming stronger, but it's maintaining its versatility. Again, the way we're making it is different, but we're still able to make these very complex steels. We used to say at AISTech that our objective was to transform tomorrow. We've refined that a little bit, and today we see our purpose as smarter steels for people and planet.
Thank you very much, John. Dave, I think the word you had was bullish. Let's see if your mic works.
I am incredibly bullish on the steel industry. Bullish because of talent. Bullish because of trade. Bullish because of technology. And bullish because we have the opportunity to lead with ESG. When we talk about talent, we're talking about you folks. We're attracting the best and the brightest into the steel industry. Trade, we have more fair trade, and we expect people to understand how important it is to be self-sufficient wherever you live and work, and that means there has to be a level playing field. And of course, technology, we always like to say this ain't your great-grandpappy's U.S. Steel, but it's not your great-grandpappy's steel industry either. The technology, high-tech, at each and every facility attracts the best talent. And when we work on these things together and we solve the carbon intensity issue, we will truly be the ESG leaders in steel.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, sir. Mark, did I get your word turbulent chaos?
Sorry?
Your word was it turbulent?
Transformation.
Transformation.
Turbulent
I'm sorry.
Transformation, yes.
Maybe that is chaos. I don't know. Tell me about why did you? I'm not even sure that's a hyphenated word, but for you, we'll hyphenate it. Tell us what you meant by that, Mark.
Well, if no one understands that in the room, then they're not in the steel industry, I guess today. But the industry, and particularly the leadership of the steel industry today, I think is facing a much more complex, complicated, challenging environment in which to lead and go forward. And you mentioned some of the issues earlier. We're living with the vestiges of COVID. you know, the supply chain issues are still with us, and they're going to be with us for some time to come. The talent issue, the newfound term, the great resignation of people is one. Decarbonization is another. The transforming industry from a rationalization, consolidation, and expansion standpoint. The integrated industries did a phenomenal job, even pre-COVID, bringing consolidation, rationalization, and efficiency to our industry. Yet there is continued expansion, and that creates, you know, raw material issues down the road. The Ukraine, Russian, absolute human tragedy there. But again, as on the business side of things, creating raw material and supply chain issues for us all. And I think in our recent board meeting, I listed the disruptors of our industry, if that's not enough. But I think newfound wealth is a disruptor for us today. There are companies that never earned their cost of capital for years and years and years, are financially viable and profitable. And those that had, are even more so today. And there's a big challenge for us as leaders. You know, we're generating a good amount of cash. And the challenge is, what do you do with it? Right. And so the M&A environment has gone absolutely crazy, in my humble opinion. So that is the turbulent transformation.
Excellent. Mark, thank you, sir, very much. Lorenzo, fundamentals, your one-word description of the industry. Explain what you meant.
First of all, it's a great pleasure to be here with you and George and Ron again. And last time I was here, I used the same word, and I will re-emphasize what I said last time with probably a different approach. We don't work just to be profitable. We don't work just to make investors rich.
You're breaking up a bit, Lorenzo. Take.
I said that we don't work to make investors rich. We don't work to make the financial institutions happy. We work in the steel industry to make society better. And that's why we're fundamental. There's no steel for steel's sake. We have steel for a lot of things that we use in the day-to-day in our lives. And now we have a big challenge on decarbonizing, not the industry, because the industry here in the United States has already decarbonized. And even the small things that we are doing in our 1% contribution to emission in the United States, we together, the entire steel industry, 1% only of CO2 emissions, while transportation is 29%. So we need to address that. We are called dirty. We are not. We are clean already. We're getting better. We're getting cleaner. But we're fundamental because we have the responsibility to continue to generate wealth for the people of the United States. We are in the business of reinforcing manufacturing. Manufacturing generates jobs. Jobs bring back activity to the United States. We end this bad experience with globalization, bring back manufacturing and deglobalization to the United States, and a wealth middle class. Then we have democracy. That's why we're fundamental.
Well, we should know that. Chuck Schmidt, I think you used the word reinvented. Tell us what you meant.
This transformation was taken twice. I'll try a different direction on it, Jim. Having been at this
John, get us a mic.
I think Ron is working on it. Okay. Having been at this for a while, like many of you, in the technology that has reinvented, if not saved this industry over the decades. Continuous casting, electric arc furnace steel making, the micro mills of today, and now some of these fantastic facilities these companies are building as we speak. And those have forged a future for us. And at the same time, now upon us is these decarbonization strategies that every company up here has, and many others around the world. And that decarbonization strategy, again, will drive the next level of technology around steel making, around iron making, our processes. And once again, transforming or reinventing us. With those successes in our industry also came with a legacy, unfortunately, and maybe unfairly, of being still a dirty, polluting steel industry. And we've advanced far beyond that, particularly in this country. And then the final somewhat slap in the face is being designated a hard-to-abate industry in this chase on decarbonization and reducing emissions. And here we sit as steelmakers and leading the entire world in what we've already accomplished in decarbonization and reducing emissions. And I think, and thanks to all of you and the great work we've done with the technology, again, not only moving this industry forward, but really reinventing ourselves.
Great. Thank you. Chuck, hold on to that mic, because I think we may end up passing that if that makes for better sound. I'm going to ask a question that I have not asked in the past. I want to give each of these gentlemen 60 seconds, and I'm going to put on my stopwatch. I want to limit it to 60 seconds. This thing's going in now, too. Looking ahead to the remainder of this year and into next year, instead of talking about the industry as a whole, I want you to think about your company. What really excites you the most about your company? Just one item, please, and we'll just start with you, Chuck, and go right back down the row again. What's that one item that really excites you the most about SSAB?
The one item right now is the people that involved in some of the new technologies and seeing some early success. I think we're going to spend a fair amount of time talking about driving talent into our industry and specific into our company. And now we created at SSAB a bit of a different discussion. And for years we just talked about being the solution as the material of choice and so forth. And now we're back to talking about technology, innovation, and I can see the effect already in inspiring a broader group and a new set of leaders coming into the company. That's pretty inspiring.
Great, thank you, Chuck. The mic over to Lorenzo. Lorenzo, at Cleveland, what's that one thing that really excites you?
It's our role in support and make happen the decarbonization of the fleet, of the car fleet, truck fleet of the United States. Cleveland-Cliffs is the largest supplier of steel to the automotive industry. The automotive industry in North America consumes, give or take, 14 million tons of steel. We supply directly 7 of the 14, and another almost 1 through ArcelorMittal Calvert, John Brett. And so we are by far the biggest suppliers of automotive steel in this country. We are working with each one of these car manufacturers, and at this point I'm giving them all the benefit of the doubt. I'm assuming that they will all be very successful in electrifying their fleet. We're working with each one of them to electrify the fleet. I'm an engineer, like the vast majority of the ones here in the audience, so I go by numbers. If our emissions are 1% as an industry, and the transportation sector is 29%, if we are able to accomplish this goal that they have to electrify half of the fleet by 2030, by 2030, that to 29% will be 15% or 14%. That's a big accomplishment in reducing CO2. So that's very exciting for Cleveland-Cliffs. We are in the position, more than anyone, to be able to make that happen.
Mark, how about you? What's the one thing that really excites you?
Well, if anyone was in the room yesterday, you know I get really excited about my team and the people that work for SDI, and specifically how they're addressing all these challenges and turning chaos into phenomenal opportunity, And I think a fine example is the new construction project that we're now commissioning down in Sinton, $2 billion project, 3 million ton a year facility, absolutely state of the art. And in my humble opinion, it's going to revolutionize the steel industry, just as I was blessed to do in the late 80s, 90s with thin slab casting. The mill is absolutely phenomenal. It is green, it'll be clean, producing differentiated products, 84 wide, 1 inch thick, 100 KSI steels, products that are unavailable in the US today, and we have to import. The energy markets, the pipe and tube producers have to import those materials because they just can't make them there today. It's a phenomenal mill, and when you talk about talent, you talk about high tech, you talk about just a beautiful facility, it's a shining example. And the team did a phenomenal job putting it together in breakneck speed through COVID and a million other challenges that they faced.
Thank you, Mark. Pass that along. Dave, U.S. Steel, what excites you the most about U.S. Steel?
Well, I'm incredibly excited about the U.S. Steel team. And that's from the senior leadership team to each and every employee. We recently were named one of the very few companies by Ethispheres as one of the world's most ethical companies. And with that as a foundation, with our code of conduct, we're putting up the best safety numbers ever. And it's focused on what we call our best of both strategy, best of the integrated mill, best of the mini mill, where together we come together as best for all. Profitable solutions for our people, and now our most important customer, the planet. You can't just be an integrated mill, you can't just be a mini mill, you have to bring it together. And when you bring it together, really great things happen. You take your iron ore assets, which are the low cash costs in North America at U.S. Steel, you combine that with a world-class mini mill, the highest EBITDA margins in North America by far, and we're going to invest in another $3 billion facility that will be second verse, but even better than the first with an endless caster, making steels people hadn't heard of at the only LEED certified USA mill in North America. And we're going to bring those things together with our world-class finishing lines being constructed at Big River as well as at ProTech with our non-oxidized wet flash cooling that is second to none. So our iron ore assets, our mini mill assets, and our finishing assets create a new world order for steel. Best of both becomes best for all. I'm excited about the team, how they're focused, unified in achieving this vision.
Okay, thank you, sir. John Brett, how about ArcelorMittal? What excites you the most these days?
There's a great deal to be excited about. Just listening to my colleagues, it's awesome to hear all the positivity. You know, there's been, for those of us who've been around a while, there's been too many downs and not enough ups. So this is just great to hear things different. But at ArcelorMittal, like everyone else, we've made a lot of investments, upgrading, expanding, decarbonization, and other things. What really excites me is we are ensuring our long-term sustainability. And that's something that it's been very difficult to say over the last 20 or 30 years. So it really gets me excited. I think about it in the next few years in North America, well in excess of 90% of our steel production will be coke-free. And Dave talked about self-sufficiency. We think that's very important too. We will be self-sufficient in terms of our ore-based metallic needs. So for me, ensuring our sustainability is exciting. So we don't have to come back up here 5 years from now and say, okay, let's talk about how we can get ourselves out of the doldrums here.
Great.
Thank you very much, John. I want to move on now to steel markets and particularly infrastructure. You know, to whom you market your steel products in the years ahead is really critical, as you know, to the success of your company. When I think about the largest consumers of steel, I think the construction industry, the transportation and automotive sector, the energy sector, machinery and equipment manufacturing. I'm sure there are others. 6 months ago, President Biden signed the $1 trillion Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. In a statement at the time, the American Iron and Steel Institute said, quote, "Demand for American steel could increase by as much as 5 million tons for every $100 billion of new investment." The Steel Manufacturers Association said, quote, "We are also pleased with elements of the bill that emphasize sustainable steel making, green energy, and domestic procurement preferences," adding that the steel used, quote, "will be made by Americans for Americans," unquote. So gentlemen, talk to us a bit about what you and your company see as growth markets, if any, for steel in the coming year or two, and what role does this new law play in this? And I think I want to start with Mark, because you're chairman of the Steel Manufacturers Association, and I did just quote from you guys.
Mark.
So, Mark, I don't know whether your mic works or whether you want to use this thing, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, I didn't write the quote, and but I agree with it. It's difficult any time an infrastructure bill or any legislation, funding legislation like this, to analyze it and into detail and quantify the impact to us, in all honesty. I mean, these bills are thousands and thousands of pages thick, right, and we don't waste our time reading every page. Suffice it to say, it's obvious that there will be increased consumption, increased demand. One particular area, obviously, is solar. Renewable energy, whether it be windmills, whether it be actual solar panel farms. And just a factoid that fascinated me here of late, but it takes 5 acres of solar panels to make 1 megawatt of power. Per acre, there's about 20 tons of tube that goes into the ground and about 20 tons of frame to support those panels. And if you consider that the plan is to put gigawatts of solar energy into this country, that unto itself is probably 3 or 4 million tons of increased demand over the next year or two.
Got it. Good. Yeah, pass the mic to Lorenzo, because Lorenzo, if I recall correctly, you're vice chair of the AISI. So let me give you a chance to comment. How important to Cleveland Cliffs is this infrastructure bill?
The infrastructure bill is a positive for the entire industry and also for the downstream industries. And my main caveat now is to the ones that need to cut red tape to do that, because the bill is great, but the bill is paper. We need to transform that in real work, real orders, get things going. But the most exciting part of the infrastructure bill for me, and of course the points that Mark Millett mentioned are all super important, but specifically for Cleveland Cliffs, being the sole supplier of grain-oriented electrical steels and non-oriented electrical steels, and grain-oriented electrical steels go to the electrical grid that needs upgrade, no doubt about, and there's $65 billion in the infrastructure bill just to upgrade the electrical grid. $65 billion with a B, and it's necessary. And also another $7.5 billion that goes into charging stations, and charging stations dotting the country, the 48 contiguous, with charging stations that would allow electric vehicles to travel from Florida to Chicago, for example, something that today would be very difficult to do. So if these things, not if, when these things, but they will play out no matter what, but when these things play out, we're going to have a transformation in the country in terms of the ability to handle electrical vehicles that will be the real deal in terms of knocking down pollution and decarbonizing the air in the United States.
Let me just throw this out. If any of you, the others, want to comment on this particular question, I'm not going to keep running down rows because I want to really get you to interact. Let me just toss out the Buy American provisions. Melted and poured in America, I believe is the language that you use. How important is that? Any one of you? Want to speak up on that?
It's very important.
Very important. Yeah, Dave, go ahead.
Mine melted and made in the USA is very important. And as we said earlier, it's really important that countries can be self-sufficient. When you have the situation in Russia and Ukraine, you have to make sure that you have another source of supply. Now, you need partners, obviously, around the world, but it's most important that we can take care of where we live and work. So, mine melted and made in the USA is imperative.
Is it enforceable?
If it's not enforceable, it won't work. Just like with trade, if it's not enforceable, it won't work.
Got it. Thank you. Chuck, did you want to comment?
Yeah, I just briefly add on the segment side of it and what energy is providing, particularly with, it's been talked about, I know yesterday, electrification and the needs of our transmission grid, and steel's going to have a very big importance in that expansion, repair, and the Buy America, simply will complement that.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Thank you, John. All of us are talking about the direct impact, and we've heard the numbers, and John, that's the number thrown around. I think we're losing sight of something though here. Our infrastructure is in a state of ill repair.
Yeah.
And so when we finally, and I'm with Lorenzo, right now it's paper. We're still working, waiting for the first ounce, right, guys? So we're ready.
Right.
Yep. So I think the thing we're missing there is a better infrastructure. What does that mean? We'll actually be able to move our goods more efficiently. It's going to provide economic opportunities. What's that mean? That means we'll be more productive. That's going to in turn bring growth. I think there's a chance that actually the secondary, the tertiary, the indirect benefits can be greater than the numbers we're quoting. All we ask is let's get moving.
There you go.
We've been talking about this for years, right?
Yeah.
Finally, we have the act, and here we are.
I know.
Still waiting.
Let me just add to that. I mean, we have decades of underinvestment, and let's forget about as steel people for a minute, right? This is a societal issue that needs a lot of catch up. And we're talking about cyber too, cyber technology. We know how hard it is just to get the sound systems to work sometimes, right? You can imagine what it's like for people hacking us, millions and millions of times a day. I'm on Lockheed Martin's board. It's a scary world out there, folks. Yeah. This is the infrastructure is less about steel, though. We will all be huge, everybody in this room, huge beneficiaries. Tremendous beneficiary, but it's about our society. We got to fix this stuff. Let's get on with it. Let's get some things passed, and let's get some things shovel ready.
Go ahead, Lorenzo.
No, just throw my 2 cents on the melted pour that was yours.
You can use the mic there if you want.
Yeah, she said that now it's working.
Oh, well, if it's working.
Yeah. So if it's not, I can go to that. I can do both. I can do both. So anyway, back to the melt and pour. The biggest problem with the melt and pour is, at this point, more than 20 years of globalization. Globalization is fine. Producing abroad is okay. And we killed our own industry here in the United States by doing that. That was criminal. Yeah. And they knew what they were doing. The ones that approved all these things and unleashed the beast. There's one silver line in the COVID thing. It showed that you cannot rely on ports that don't work and railroads that are not efficient. Now we are clogged. Now we can't unload stuff for Amazon in Los Angeles, Long Beach. Now we cannot transport stuff between point A and point B. So, long story short, melt and pour in the United States is beautiful. Try to build a plant right now and buy everything in the United States. We cannot do it. I started building our HBI facility in 2018, and Cliff Smith and I had a commitment that we're not going to buy anything that's not made in the USA. It's a dream. We had to buy, otherwise we would not have the plant. I assume Mark went through the same hell when he was building Sinto. And I know his feelings about melt and pour. So we have a reality that we need to unravel, and that reality was put in front of us for more than 20 years. It's our responsibility as leaders in this industry, people that can talk to the cabinet members, to influence them, to understand that these things have consequences, and the consequences are decades in the make. We are unraveling that.
Yeah. Do you think we've learned the lesson after this pandemic? Do you
No.
think? No.
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 No. We only
We
learned.
heard you. No.
John, we only learned lessons. We only learn lessons when things change. And we were able in the United States, and I always use the United States because it's my country, it's our country. We love it. We want the United States to do better. We allowed the financial entities to try to control what we do. They're supposed to be passive investors. They're supposed to be following what we do and investing and benefiting from that, not dictating what we do. So that's another fight that we need to continue to fight. So as soon as the pandemic passes, it's like a wildfire in California. As soon as one is put down, they are ready for next year, and they forget for 11 months. So we did not learn, but we need to learn as a country. But we need to be committed to continue to explain, to continue to educate. We made progress, but they haven't learned it.
I'm a lot more bullish than that, by the way. I think we are learning, maybe at a not fast enough pace, but there were so many lessons learned in all this. In fact, now as we see what's happening in Europe and their 40% dependency on Russia for their oil, they are learning they have to manage that pace. Now, they're not there yet, but there's a greater awareness that needs to happen, and it's like a lot of change. You become aware, and then you get the resources, you get the structure, you get the rhythm, you get the tempo in place to achieve it. It is changing, and I remain bullish that we're going to have fairer trade.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Lorenzo, on that topic. I'm going to ask one last question on this, and I think you've anticipated this, and maybe you've already answered it, but I will tell you as somebody in the news media, I've seen and interviewed the President, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm, Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo, who have been traveling all over the country to promote the infrastructure bill. I know I'm just curious, but I know it's only been 6 months. Have any of you seen any specific orders at all from anyone for steel as a result of this infrastructure bill? I think you may have already answered no to that. Any idea when some of these dollars might come your way? Anybody have a thought? No.
2023.
2023, yeah. Lorenzo says silence is deafening. I mean, that's part of it is also the bureaucracy. A lot of this money is going to go through state governments. Right?
And states are different from each other.
States are very,
States are different from each other.
But it's okay. It will get figured out. There will be a crescendo. 2023, 2024, bullish, I tell you, bullish on steel.
Got it. Great.
And
Chuck,
John,
go ahead.
John,
Dave's right. There's definitely going to be a ramp up and an acceleration. We're making bridge steels today. I don't think you don't have to travel very far today to see highways are under construction. You know, there's major airport construction at every major city. So, you know, demand is very good. Is it directly related to the new bill? No, not yet. But you know, we'll see that watershed moment in hopefully 23.
Great. All right. Well, let's talk.
John, if I can.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Mark. Go ahead.
It's not imperative that it takes place and that spending is today, in my humble opinion, because the markets are strong, very, very strong. Mm-hmm. People are critical that the automotive folks are at a lower level because of chips, but the pent-up demand there remains incredibly solid. And so 5 or 6 years at 15 million units is a hell of a lot better than 1 year at 17 and then going down to 12 or 13. Non-residential construction is very, very, very strong as well. And it's just that the infrastructure bill, if it comes around in 8 to 12 months, then it's just going to extend the bullish market that Dave describes going forward.
Let me just agree wholeheartedly with that, because look at where we are with the Fed, right? And where we are in the world economy. And 14 times the Fed's taken rates up, 11 times have gone into recession. And the Fed chairman says softish landing, which means recession's coming, folks, right? And if 11 out of 14 times it's happened, this could help with the softish landing, right? We've seen yield curves invert. We know it's inevitable, but having this crescendo, having this infrastructure bill could be just the right timing. I'm completely with you, Mark.
Got it. Great. Well, let me move on to another topic, another big issue in the steel industry these days, which is clean steel, green steel, climate neutral steel, or as many say, the so-called decarbonization of steel. I know each of you publish sustainability reports covering ESG issues, and the environmental demands of customers, communities, and all levels of government have grown. And as these demands extend beyond your so-called Scope 1 emissions, those from your plants and operations directly under your control, they also include Scope 2 emissions from your power sources like local electricity and natural gas, and Scope 3 emissions from everything else, as I understand it, like those who transport to and from your facilities and suppliers, both domestically and overseas. Lorenzo, I want to start with you, because I believe you've noted that decarbonization is not a truly accurate term, because carbon really is the element that gives strength to, and ductility to steel. What I think is you really mean, or what we mean by decarbonization, is how do we make steel reducing carbon dioxide emissions, gas emissions? You've also told me that American steel producers are not the real culprits in CO2, and you said that again today. And I know you feel very strongly about that. I wonder if you could explain and tell us, what is Cleveland-Cliffs, as an operator of both blast furnaces and electric arc furnaces, doing to reduce CO2 gas emissions?
Yeah, I don't like the term decarbonization because, you know, a lot of young people here in the room, metallurgists, steel is a iron carbon alloy, so we can't take the carbon out of steel because then it's no longer steel. So we are talking about CO2, we're not talking about carbon.
Right.
And CO2 is generated by a very complex chemical reaction. C plus O2 giving CO2 and heat. That's it. So every time you reduce the C, you reduce the CO2. That's why the term decarbonization became kind of a word of mouth. So with this little fixing, let's talk about that. If you ask someone outside of our business now, where's the effort to decarbonize is happening, I would say that 8 out of 10 will say that's in Europe. And that's another thing that if you repeat it over and over and over and over and over again, people end up believing that it's true. They're not. They actually don't even have natural gas to make ends meet in Europe in January. Actually, I said that in this conference last year when I gave my speech at the conference. So Europe is not going to lead anything on decarbonization because they can't. They don't have the tools. We do. Here in the United States, one thing that we have that's easily available and is still okay in terms of cost is natural gas. Natural gas is key. Natural gas makes blast furnaces reduce coke rate. More than that, we are able to, with natural gas, to produce direct reduced iron. And direct reduced iron has a big role in decarbonizing. And we have it. Mark Millett has a rotary kiln furnace in his facility. Nucor has. So we are on this for a long time. ArcelorMittal has, by the way, in Canada and in Trinidad. Mexico. So we have a lot of that here in this industry. So we're ahead of the curve by a bunch, by a bunch. As far as hydrogen, yeah, it's a reductant. It's a good one. I'm trying to put in my facility in Toledo because it's possible. Guess what? There's no hydrogen available for that. So we're going to give it a try. When they finally get, they meaning the suppliers, They finally get us hydrogen. So we are there. We don't have anything else to decarbonize. In order to decarbonize more, we need to all shut down what we have and just produce rebar. Because with rebar, you only melt scrap, and you don't have to deal with pig iron. What we cannot do is continue to import pig iron from Russia, and that's a different conversation I'll leave for later.
Yeah, we will get to that. We will get to that. Thank you, Lorenzo. John, I want you to tell us a little bit about what you're doing, because you're converting your integrated DeFasco facility in Hamilton, Ontario, to an all-EAF facility, which is a huge undertaking and an expensive one, I know. Is it motivated by a goal, essentially, to have nothing coal-based on this continent at ArcelorMittal?
So I'll talk specifically about Hamilton a little bit. There's more to it than just doing the right thing and eliminating CO2 emissions. We're nearing at the end of the life of our assets, our primary assets there. So it's a little bit different situations than some other parts of our company or the rest of the world, where we're going to have to do something anyway. And Lorenzo just touched on it. Natural gas, although it's increased quite a bit here in the last 4 or 5 weeks, it's still very reasonably priced. And actually, in this part of the world, you can actually produce at a lower cost via the EAF route. So it really came together for a lot of reasons. It is going to be quite a challenge, as you just alluded to, in that we are going to continue operating while we construct. So we are going to transition real time. So we're very excited about that. I'll play off a little bit something that Dave talked about. Again, for the world, this problem is so massive, I think you need multi-pronged approaches. There's not a single right answer. And so we're focusing on two. One of them we call innovative DRI, and again, I'll address what Lorenzo just mentioned. The innovative is hydrogen, okay? And Lorenzo's right, it's not available today. We actually did just run a test, and it took months and months, and we actually used 7% hydrogen as opposed to natural gas, and it worked quite well. So it's good, it's an industrial setting, but we have a lot of work to do there. But that's the innovative part. The other part is what we call smart carbon, and really you need to do that in conjunction with CCU and CCS. So, you know, Dave's right, there's just not one approach. But we all have to come to grips with the cost of this. It's staggering. Yeah. It is staggering. You know, whether you're talking about in North America, it's certainly less because, as Lorenzo said, we're in a better position. But you think about globally, you know, I've read numbers in excess of $1 trillion. $1 trillion with a T. And multiples of that, if you're going to really consider the clean energy, just what we need in the steel industry, not the rest of the world. So I think that, you know, we really have to look for opportunities to work together.
Yeah, this is such a great point you're making here, because what we have is a societal challenge.
Absolutely.
But let's face it, we don't do stuff just because it's fun or all society. We got to make profit, right? We're not going to do stuff we're not going to make money at, right? You can't have jobs, you can't do stuff. You have to have profitable solutions. And that's where I come back to what you're working on is impressive, because I do think the solution is amongst the best of both, where you take what are all those great things that integrated mills can do, like the high technology metallurgical understanding with the automotive exposed finishing, that great work that's there with the people that are metallurgists, PhD, genius types that figure all that stuff out. And then you got the electric arc furnaces, which they're process experts, you know, every day. It's better than yesterday, but not as good as tomorrow. And we see that at Big River. What we see is a combination of here as we solve our capital intensity, our cost intensity, and this carbon intensity. You've got to bring these things together. You know, let's just face it. You think we're going to have any more blast furnaces in the United States anytime soon, right? Less blast furnaces? Probably so. But we've got to get to first principle. The fundamental things that we have to work on is think differently. We can't figure stuff out by figuring out by benchmark. What's world-class best? I can tell you, world-class best isn't good enough. And so you have to think completely differently. And if you're just focused on electric arc furnaces and mini mills, not going to get you there. If you're just focused on the integrated blast furnace technology, not going to get you there. Now, you can take some great things like the mine sites that you have on the integrated mills, the brilliant people you got there that actually develop this steel that hasn't been developed before, and then you take this highly efficient process orientation, speed, which, by the way, makes better steel, high-tech steel, better than before. You've got to look at both of those, and the only way you solve this is through partnerships. And by the way, countries are going to pay. Communities are going to pay. Counties are going to pay, or we won't solve this problem. It's going to take everybody working very hard on thinking differently. We can't commoditize ourselves. There needs to be breakthroughs. You can't just keep getting bigger and bigger. You've got to get focused and solve this problem. It's a whole societal thing, and until we get our acts together at the government level, at the industry level, and at the community level, which understand we're all going to pay more. Yeah. Everything's going to be more expensive over the longer term. If we don't do that, it's not going to be solved, but it's going to take the best of both types of technology in order to win.
Dave, thank you very much, and John, too. Thank you both. I wanted to talk to Chuck because SSAB, speaking of outside America, in Europe, your company in Europe has been a leader in developing steel without carbon, something called hybrid, or hydrogen breakthrough iron-making technology. What I've seen SSAB and others promote is fossil-free steel. Fossil-free steel. That's ambitious. What's the status of this?
Well, yeah, that's certainly our goal, and I think as one of the companies up here operating blast furnaces in Europe, as Lorenzo accurately describes, it's a completely different path. The availability of natural gas in Europe either comes from Russia, a non-starter, or it has to be imported. But there is an abundance of hydro, an abundance of wind energy, and a fair amount of nuclear, and maybe more. And so, the path through that renewables on electrification will take some time. When we announced it in 2016 to invest in this hydrogen technology for iron making, not steel making, we come short of that. I know Mark will be quick to correct me there, but it is creating these iron units, and we have proven that technology with hybrid now on a pilot plant in small scale, but we're all in now on the next step or two in a full demonstration project, and so.
Do you see this in America anytime soon?
Well, I think at some scale, yes, for those with a different ambition as we have of more fossil-free than simply reducing emissions to a net zero. I think those are two different discussions. For us in America, we operate two electric arc furnaces, and we have already brought this hybrid, the hydrogen material, and melted it successfully in our plant in Alabama. And probably by the end of the year, we'll also do trials in our Iowa facility, which is already charged with 90% renewable energy. So you see how close we're getting when we can run a melt shop with 90% wind energy and use an iron unit that has been reduced from hydrogen. That's a big leap, and so we're pretty excited about that.
I saw Lorenzo's hand, and then Dave. Go ahead.
Yeah, just because you asked about if Chuck sees the use of hydrogen here in the United States. We already use, because at the end of the day, a Midrex reactor, a direct reduction, I'm saying Midrex, there are other suppliers that like Tenova that are good too. My experience is all with Midrex, is the new blast furnace. It's a blast furnace in solid state. So we are reducing iron. And the reductant is not coal. The reductant is not coke. The reductant is H2. Because natural gas is 96% CH4. And the other 4% are other hydrocarbons. So it's good to be in the AISTech because you can talk chemistry here and the audience will understand. So
Everybody understand?
Yeah, we are basically breaking hydrocarbons into H2, particularly CH4. So when you use natural gas, your reductant is actually H2. Through catalyzed chemical reactions, we break that to individualize the H2, and that's the reductant. What you see at the top is steam, is H2O, it's water. So that's the process in a nutshell. So when you say hydrogen, what we don't have is hydrogen on the pipe, green hydrogen on the pipe. That's not going to happen here anytime soon or anywhere else in the world, because that's not the way to go. We're going to clean energy using nuclear energy, but that will be a different conversation too. I'll keep for later.
Yeah, Dave and then Mark. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we have the engineers in here because I'm sure you all know that you wouldn't actually take HBI and put it in a blast furnace unless you couldn't sell it through an electric arc furnace. But that's another issue. Hydrogen, for example, is hydrogen today is very. Lorenzo, I let you talk. Okay, Lorenzo, can I finish first, please?
Go ahead.
I'm not a sell side analyst, okay? I get to talk when I want. Okay.
All right, Dave, go, and then
Hydrogen technology is here today. It is fantastic technology. It is proven technology. It's further along than autonomous vehicles. It's that valid and that real. The problem is it's too expensive. And it's going to be expensive it has to be dropped like 2/3 the cost. You're doing it already. You're not going to do it because it's only 7%. You do it all if you could expend it. But the issue with hydrogen is a cost issue. It is the future. There's no doubt about it. And you need to have iron ore to do that. You need to have HBI. You need to have DRI. You need to go from natural gas to ultimately green steel. It is the future, and you're ahead of the game, no doubt.
all right. Lorenzo,
I
real
need to
quick.
react to one thing that Dave Bird said because it's plain wrong. He said that we're using HBI in blast furnace because we can't sell HBI. First of all, we're selling HBI. We're not selling to you, but we are selling to North Star Blue Scope.
Who?
And unfortunately, Mark Vestala is not here, but we are selling. And we might be selling to other people too, but you don't need to know. That's number one. Second, HBI is pre-reduced iron. When you put HBI in a blast furnace, you reduce dramatically the need for coke. That's the other reductant. So our coke rate today is less than half the coke rates of all steel companies in Japan, South Korea, or Europe. The Japanese are trying to come to visit us to see what we're doing. I'm not allowing them because it's our proprietary technology. Right. So we are ahead of the game.
Mark, you're
Okay,
between.
I got to come back on that. Wait a minute.
Mark has had his.
I'm glad you're really ahead of the game there, but you're comparing to a blast furnace and the improvements versus other countries. We'll just let Mark talk about green and electric arc furnaces and how what Lorenzo said doesn't make any sense.
Well, I'm not sure what Mark's going to say. He is, he is between these two gentlemen.
It's 80%.
I'll stick to my own dialogue.
Yeah.
And talking about dialogue as an industry.
Oh, you may need that mic. Lorenzo, can you pass Mark the mic? Thank you, sir.
Talking about dialogue as an industry, we need to consider the dialogue that's happening outside this room, because I think most of us recognize that we are the absolute world's leader making clean steel by far. Mm-hmm. And everything we do in this country, whether it be integrated or whether it be electric arc furnace, is just going to push it forward. And all the expense and all the R&D and all the asset destruction, it's just to get the rest of the world to us. By the time they get here, we're going to be carbon neutral. There's absolutely no doubt about it. And I think if you look at the electric arc furnace process, and this is not our view, but this is the view of our European automaking friends that know far more about this than I do. But our Butler facility and our Columbus facility are among the cleanest operations in the world, because they're step 2 emissions, which are grid related. Butler is on a nuclear supply source, and Columbus is the TVA. Bottom line, we as an industry are phenomenally ahead of the world. And as I challenged the media yesterday at a short press conference, they're the ones that have got to carry the message. You folks have got to carry the message to every little media outfit that you interact with, because people need to know we don't have a problem in the States with carbon. We just don't. And the greatest thing, the greatest impact the American consumer, each and every one of you, each and every one of here, that can have on carbon footprint, global carbon footprint, is buy goods that are made in America, of American steel. Full stop. As a country today, we import roughly 32 million tons of steel-contained goods in cars, automobiles, trucks, appliances, refrigerators. 32 million tons. And virtually every one of those tons is dirty steel from China or from other places. The consumer is going to have to pay a little bit more, as David said, to be a carbon-free society. But that's the cost. But the best thing everyone can possibly do is buy goods that are made in America, melted and poured in America.
Great. Thank you. John, do you want to quickly add, and then I'm going to move on to another.
I want to get back to your question because it shouldn't go unanswered, particularly given the audience we have. You asked, can it be done here?
Yes.
The answer is yes. We
We're
have
talking about fossil-free steel.
are using hydrogen, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, we have the brightest minds in the world right here in this room, and let's never take away how innovative they are. It gets back to what we're talking about is the cost of it. And I think that it's without question true. We're ahead of the world, but we need to stay ahead of the world. We need to be the masters of our own universe. And so I think that we really need to work together. We're doing a lot of things where we're investing in funds. And the idea are companies where we are really looking for people who are there on the cutting edge. They're on breakthrough technologies to really address this global issue. So again, I didn't want to leave. Yes, it's possible. And the people that are capable of doing it are sitting in this room. We just have to figure out, okay, collectively, how can we work together to take some of this cost out? The other thing, we'll get there much quicker if we work together. I mean, these are first-class problems, right? So whether you're talking about renewables, right? Don't listen to anyone who talks about hydrogen if they don't talk about renewables. It's impossible, right? CCU, yeah, but how about CCS? We have to attack this with every means we have. So, but let's not ever give up all the things that you people actually do. You solve new problems every single day. We'll fix this. We'll get there. I'm confident.
I have a ton of questions on this topic, but I'm going to keep moving because we are limited in time, and this has been really a good, lively discussion. I want to move on to metallics and raw materials. So let me just ask you, y'all need, obviously, raw materials to make steel, like iron ore or scrap steel or pig iron, for example. Some of your companies that need iron ore have your own supplies. Others do not. The supply of scrap has been tightening because of the growth of electric arc furnaces, both here and around the world, particularly in China. And the supply of pig iron has been challenged and compromised because more than half the world's pig iron comes from Russia and Ukraine. So let's start with the supply of scrap. I saw a report in Reuters the other day that China would boost scrap consumption from 70 million to 300 million tons over 5 years. And so the basic question is, as demand on the available scrap pool increases, how will your company preserve an adequate supply of scrap and scrap substitutes? And Mark, I'm going to start with you because we had breaking news this week that you at Steel Dynamics are acquiring a Mexican scrap metals recycling business. So tell us a little bit more about this and how your company is going to preserve an adequate supply of scrap or scrap substitute.
Super. Well, there's no doubt that if you consider the period 21 through 22, there's going to be about 13 million tons of total additional electric arc furnace capacity come online. And if you look at 23 through, depends on how quickly David builds his mills and things, 28, but no.
Ours are on budget, on time.
But if you
Go ahead.
If you consider 23, let's just say through 26, there's probably another 15 million tons. So that's a big jump. You got 28 million tons of additional scrap or raw material demand in arguably a 80 million ton scrap market. From our perspective, I think innovation is the answer, in all honesty. There are those out there that would suggest, well, prime scrap is going to be absolutely tight and impossible to get and create very, very large problems for the electric arc furnace community. But as John said, the steel industry, our teams for sure, if we have a challenge, we're going to fix it. Innovation, creativity, ingenuity fixes problems. And just in a short period of time, the last 8-9 months, our team at Butler, for instance, dropped its prime scrap percentage in the mix from around about 65-70% down to 40%. So reduced our prime scrap consumption 30% across the company. If the Nucors and the Big River Steels and everyone does that, again, there's going to be a reasonable amount of prime freed up. But then secondarily, where the innovation comes in, and I think people have this misnomer about, well, it has to be prime scrap. And prime scrap visually, connotates the notion of bright, shiny, clean bundles, bright, shiny, clean busheling scrap. But that's not what you want in an electric arc furnace. It's low residual is the critical item. And so technologies are already being developed and will continue to improve to reduce the tramp elements in that obsolete flow. We have a Shred 1 initiative. Again, Shred 1 obsolete flow is almost just a limitless volume. America's got a massive, massive reservoir of that obsolete material. It's elastic. And when I say elastic, price draws that out of the fields. And there's millions and millions and millions and millions of tons of that material that if processed correctly can supplant a lot of the prime scrap needs. You add some HBI from our dear friend Lorenzo and others, and just the sort of the capitalistic driver of higher costs, because there's absolutely no doubt raw materials will be trading at a through cycle at a higher level than it is today. That will, unto itself, drive greater innovation. So we're not overly concerned, to be honest.
Tell me a little more about your Mexican acquisition that you just announced on Monday, I think.
Well, strategically, we've always wanted to sort of base load our operations. Today we're roughly 13 million tons of melt capacity, growing to around 16 million tons. We have OmniSource, our recycling arm, that has arguably 6-7 million tons of capability. And we tend to try and base load a scrap sort of conduit supply around our mills. So we've got that in the Midwest. We have it growing in Columbus. And for our Sinton facility, we're doing the same thing. So Roca is additive to our Zimmer acquisition that we made, or undertook last year, just to bolster the supply of scrap to our own facilities.
Great. Thank you. Lorenzo, I think Mark just sort of referenced this, and I'm not a metallurgist. I'll say this right off the bat. I'm hardly anywhere near. But if I understand correctly, you can use what I'll just call lower quality scrap in steelmaking with the aid of DRI and with your hot briquetted iron. Am I right about that? I mean, you offer a product that can make a difference.
Yeah, look, the more sophisticated the spec, more metallics or virgin metallics and known chemical composition you need to have. As simple as that, in a nutshell, for non-metallurgists. So if you're melting low spec product, you can use whatever you want in terms of scrap. As you go up, you need more and more metallics. In our case, Cleveland-Cliffs, and let me go back the clock to 2019, when I was still building our flagship Toledo plant, direct reduction plant. My intention as Cleveland-Cliffs as a miner was no doubt about to sell HBI to electric arc furnace and stay as a miner. But the miscalculation was not about the need. The miscalculation was about the timing. At that time, the mini mills had their own ways of getting raw materials. They are happy with the raw materials they were getting, and life is good. And we need to find a solution for ourselves. And that's what we did. And our solution was acquiring AK Steel first, and then ArcelorMittal USA after, and going from $2 billion in revenues to $20.4 billion in revenues in 2 years. More than 10 times growth and profitable. So there's always a solution for a problem. And there's always an HBI plant to supply the mini mills that I want to supply. So we are going to go that way.
Okay, good. Let me move on to, unless others want to comment on this. Go ahead, Chuck, and then Dave.
Go ahead, Chuck.
Just very quickly, because recognizing some of the great work of metallurgists, we had this discussion, years ago within SSAB when you talk about the use of iron units and grades of scrap. As many of you might know, we produce a great deal of high-strength products and highly abrasion resistance products and so forth, some very sophisticated steels. And within our company, early on, there was a very strong debate because of virgin iron ore and so forth being used in Europe. Could we duplicate and make these same grades in our electric arc furnace in the U.S.? And that debate has been entirely settled now that we can and we do, with the fantastic work of our metallurgists and engineers.
Excellent. Dave, did you want to comment on this?
One of the big problems that mini mills have, and since we have both now, is the scope 3. And so for us, we're very fortunate that we do have the low cash cost iron ore range in North America. So we are in the process of building pig, DR, and so on. We'll continue to grow that. The thing to remember, again, getting back to this, is the integrated mill portion, the blast furnace portion, will be limited in terms of the amount of carbon reduction it will get until it gets to hydrogen. Right now, today, Big River Steel with Verdex, which is our proprietary green steel, is as much as 80% less use of carbon. So it's not 50% like in an integrated mill with a blast furnace, 80. And that's really the future that it's going to be iron ore assets, finishing assets, mini mill assets. That's the secret sauce. Natural gas, to hydrogen, and ultimately that's what differentiates the whole United States versus others. In Europe, Europe's going to be so challenged with the cost of natural gas and energy that everything will be slowed there until they get a better strategy. And who knows what China's going to do, because they're actually adding blast furnaces and coal-fired boilers, if you can imagine that. So we have a rare opportunity here, in my view, at U.S. Steel to do the best of both and get low cost and highest quality steel with the lowest carbon footprint.
Thank you very much, Dave. I want to move on to pig iron. You just mentioned pig iron, which, if I understand correctly, when mixed with scrap in electric furnaces, I mean, it's necessary to make steel. And Ukraine and Russia account for over half the world's supply of pig iron. And I know that obviously with what's going on, the sanctions against Russia, the war in Ukraine, supplies have dwindled. So I wanted to ask how companies are dealing with this issue. But before I get there, I think it's important because we have a couple panelists who have, physical presence and involvement near or in Ukraine. So I wanted to ask about where we are with that. And I'll start with you, Dave, because I know that U.S. Steel has a major integrated steel mill just 60 kilometers from the Ukrainian border in Košice?
Yeah,
Did I pronounce that right? Slovakia, which parenthetically gets its iron ore from Ukraine. So can you tell us what's the status of your operation over there now?
Yeah, well first, this is just a horrible tragedy for humanity around the globe, what's going on in Ukraine. We all need to condemn what's happening there, and it defies logic. That being said, we have this kind of stoic philosophy. We think about amor fati. Some of you probably heard a lover of fate. To find something, no matter what comes your way, how terrible it might be, not just to find something you like about it, but find something that you love about it. And that's what we did with the Ukraine. And we actually got out in front of this many months in advance. And so we have actually, there's a purpose-built iron range that fills our mill in Košice, and we have many months ahead of supply. We don't know how long this will last, but clearly from a supply chain perspective, my gosh, the people in USSK who have family and friends and taking care of refugees and all these things, they're doing just an absolutely remarkable job of running that facility with the help of our procurement people here in the United States. And I'll say this about that. Where we are right now, the numbers will be better than before the war. That's how much stronger things are for us at USSK because of the focus, because of the talent that we have in that facility. And who knows what's going to happen next quarter or next year, but for the foreseeable future, they're managing the supply chain very, very well.
Thank you, Dave, for that update. And I want to move to your neighbor there, John, at ArcelorMittal. I know ArcelorMittal operates one of Ukraine's largest steel mills in Kryvyi Rih, which is in the center east of Ukraine, about 60 kilometers from Russian-occupied Ukraine, south near Crimea. I understand that operations were shut down at one point, but the government of Ukraine really wants you up and running. And can you tell us what the status is right now?
Absolutely, but before I do that, again, playing a little bit off Dave, I want to take this opportunity to express my admiration for the perseverance, the resiliency of our employees. We have 26,000 employees there. Many of those employees have joined the military to defend their country, and so their family members are actually in the mill now. And I'm sad to report we've lost some of those individuals in combat. So getting back to answering your question, John, at the onset of the invasion, we suspended operations. And we were more focused on safety and evacuating families. But in about mid-April, the Ukrainian government actually approached us and strongly encouraged us to consider restarting. So we did. We've restarted one blast furnace, one of three. We're only operating at about 20%. We are making predominantly pig, but logistics is nightmarish. Forget about getting pig to where it normally has come. Much of it's come here before. Just trying to get it to Poland is difficult. So we'll have to work through that. We do have ore production. Dave was just talking about some of it. We are operating about 50 to 60%. So, right now I'm sure you will all join me in hoping for an expeditious resolution. I don't know what that is, but we certainly need to get there in a hurry.
Are you at all worried? I know when I think of steel in Ukraine, of course, we now think of Mariupol and
Yes.
the besieged steel facility there that finally it's come to an end there. Is there any risk at all for your Ukrainian steel mill from the Russians?
Yeah.
I mean, you're not, what are you, 60 kilometers from them?
Well, every day you hear that there are Russian troops within closer proximity. So, I don't even want to throw out kilometers because it could be wrong. So,
Right.
Sure, we're totally concerned about it. But again, these are strong, resilient people, and they're going to stand up for their country. And we're doing things that are helping their military. So they need the steel right now. And the other thing they need, they're getting a lot of assistance from many countries throughout the world. But they also need to generate goods, to get money. So without question, we're concerned. If we think that they're going to really, truly be in harm's way tomorrow, we'll do something to get them out quickly. But the fact, they want to stay.
Well, and their government wants you operating.
Yeah, but the thing is, the people there are amazing. They dig deeper every day. The resolve grows. Even if we said stop, I don't really listen to us.
Right.
I'll be honest with you.
Am I right in thinking President Zelensky comes from that area?
He does. That is his hometown. So I don't know. Maybe that was a little bit influential why he asked or encouraged strongly to get moving. But he is from that exact part of the region.
Right. Well, thank you both for sharing that with us. I thought it was important to ask you about this. Anybody want to comment on the pig iron issue? And yeah, Mark, go ahead.
Well, again, I think at the end of the day, innovation sort of drives success. And just to give our team massive credit, many years ago, we pioneered an iron-making process called Iron Dynamics. Lorenzo alluded to it earlier at Butler. It's consistently has been making about 260,000 tons of good pig iron every year, which allows that facility, at least at a reduced appetite, to be almost self-sufficient in iron. And so our intent is to explore that further, combine it with new biochar technologies so that we can actually get a clean iron going into our electric arc furnaces, gotcha. Which will reduce our step 3, scope 3 emissions as well. So it's, again, as John said earlier, whenever there's a challenge that confronts our industry, the folks out there figure it out.
Good.
So.
Good. Thank you, sir. Lorenzo.
No, look, everything that John Bratt and Dave Burt said about the situation there, it's pretty comprehensive and covers the entire thing over there. I'm, at this point, a lot more concerned about how the rest of the world will continue to react to Russia. Because just here in the United States, we used to import, don't include Cleveland-Cliffs, but the mini mills, because they need pig iron, and there was not pig iron available for them, they had to import. And they're importing basically 6 million tons a year, 2 from Brazil, rough numbers. 2 from Brazil, 2 from Ukraine, 2 from Russia. Well, Ukraine is not able to produce that pig iron anymore, at least not in that tonnage. And Russia not only will be able, but willing to continue to to produce that pig iron. And that pig iron will pop up in other countries. And I will easily mention 2 names that are destinations for that pig iron, because these people talk both sides of their mouths at the same time that they try to be part of the international community of countries. They are also good friends with Xi Jinping, and they are Vladimir Putin. Xi Jinping in China and Prime Minister Modi in India. So China and India playing both sides of their mouths. That pig iron that will flood the world will be transshipment from Russian pig iron, and we know well transshipments. We have been dealing with that with steel. Same thing will happen with pig iron. So here in the United States, that's the time when we are ready to help and cooperate with our peers, and we are working in the background just in case to supply the mini mills, in case we really block Russia in a way that they cannot make money, they will struggle, and they will not be able to finance their war, even if they try to use Chinese money in the background.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Appreciate that. I'm gonna move on because we always try to leave at least 10 minutes at the end for questions from you folks, and I'm assuming you've all taken advantage of the, yes, good, we got lots of questions. Good, so let me move on real quickly. I wanted to ask about the Section 232 Trade Expansion Act of 1962. As you know, in March of 2018, then President Trump imposed a tax, 25% tax, on most steel imports, except those from Canada and Mexico. This was modified in November with respect to the European Union. You're all familiar with that, allowing the tax-free importation of 3.3 million metric tons of steel, with amounts above that taxed at the 25% level. And in March, the administration agreed to let Japan import tax-free up to 1.25 million metric tons of their melted and poured steel into the US. So I guess my question, where are we, in your view, with respect to these restrictions on steel, on imported steel? Have we leveled the playing field? Do we need to maintain these import restrictions? How much longer? Is there benefit here? What do you think? I'm just going to open this up. Who would like to take on this question? Anybody? Are we happy with this? Dave, go ahead.
I'll be happy to. You know, we have to go back to 232. I think some of us were in the White House March 1st in 2018 with President Trump when these were put in place, the 25% tariff. Really great thing for the industry. Recently, I was in the White House. I also had an opportunity to talk with the Secretary of Commerce and the great work that they're doing. So this is where I get really bullish. You know, if you think about the Republicans, typically it was always free, 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 everything's free trade, right? And the Democrats were always called protectionists, where it kind of, you end up getting a little bit of this best of both now, where we had these tariffs in place, now we have a quota and a tariff on top of that. That seems like they're getting the right balance correct at this point in time, but it comes, and I have a lot of confidence in this administration to hold the line, because it gets back to, again, beating to the drum, folks. You gotta be self-sufficient, you gotta be able to take care of your families, your community, and your country. And if you let other people infringe on your territory and take stuff away from you, you're screwed. So I believe, based upon my discussions with both administrations, there's a strong position, and this is one of the few things I think both sides agree with. We have to have fair trade. China's a problem, and now Russia is a problem, and I believe we're gonna, in fact, we have other friendly countries that are still a problem too. And so I'm highly confident that we're going to be in a very good state, because if they don't do this, we'll end up like Europe and not be self-sufficient, dependent upon bad actors to take care of us.
Thank you very much for those comments. Let me broaden the question and then open all of this again up. Because I think we talked about decarbonization. And Lorenzo, you've made the point that we're leading the way here in the USA. So what type of carbon border adjustment mechanism do you believe could be effective at rewarding clean steel production while keeping out that dirty steel that's coming in from China and other countries. So I guess I'm really focused on governance, on the administration, on public policy. What is it? Are we doing right by the current import restrictions? And what do you see looking forward? Is there anything you would like to see with respect to carbon border adjustment? And Lorenzo, I mentioned your name. I'll let you go at it if you like.
All right. Okay. Look, I'm totally in favor, 100%. We are the cleanest steel industry in the entire world. Everybody knows. Everybody recognizes, including the Europeans, including the Japanese, including everybody. So that's a fact. The problem when you start to quantify, you need to do it properly. Again, in this audience of predominantly engineers, it's easy to explain these things. When you measure emissions, you cannot just stick with the scope 1 and 2, because scope 1 and 2 is just part of the problem. It's not the entire problem. There's scope 3. Let me simplify the explanation of scope 3 in a way that even people that are not involved in this subject would understand. Imagine a hot-rolled coil that was produced inside one of my integrated mills. That's called Middletown. And then I sent that coil to a facility outside the plant, like my Tech and Coat, that is part of Cleveland Cliffs. The galvanized product that will be produced at Tech and Coat will have all the emissions from the time that iron ore was mined in Minnesota and then pelletized and then reduced inside the blast furnace and then through the BOF and everything else. Now let's assume that coil that I produced at Middletown is sold to Mark Millett and he rolls that coil at the tax. That's not very different from Tech and Coat. That coil comes to Mark Millett carbon-free because everything that came on that coil is scope 3 and it's not accounted for. So the tax, fantastic facility. Tech and Coat, same facility. They can produce the same type of steel. Mine will have a higher footprint because scope 1 and 2 is right there. And Mark Millett's, the tax will have scope 1 plus scope 2 equals 0. It's just scope 3. Do you know how much the galvanized line will add in terms of emissions? Nothing. That makes the mini mills best of both. You know
Oh, a plug for best of both from Lorenzo?
Is that a problem?
So he gets 50%.
Is that a problem?
Less
That's
than
not a
80%?
problem.
Wait a minute, no, just so it's registered. Thank you, Lorenzo.
Others, with respect to both of these questions. Yeah, go ahead, John.
To talk about CBAM a little bit, to be effective, it really needs to be comprehensive, yes. All-inclusive, and very closely monitored. And what I mean by that is it's got to cover all products. It has to start with raw materials, and it has to go all the way through to steel-containing goods. Not just our products, but what our customers do. So that has to happen. Another thing, there has to be a component that's going to guard against countries exporting their low-emission steel and consuming their high-emission steel in their home markets. Right. Otherwise, it's just moving things around, and we'll actually get worse, not better, if we allow that. And then closely monitored. And Lorenzo touched on it. First of all, what are the rules? They have to be established, but then who's going to monitor it? We've seen this. No matter what we try to do, people, nice word, circumvent, true word, cheat, the system. So it's going to happen. So, who's going to be this body? And the last thing it should do, if it's really effective, then people be encouraged to actually invest in low carbon emission steel. If it doesn't do those things, it's going to be a massive failure, an unmitigated failure. So I think that, we really need some people to come together and think through this and not do something rash. When we do that, it's half-baked, and it really ends up causing us more problems than it's worth.
Thank you, John. Chuck had his hand up now.
Yeah, it's been summarized well, but it's you know, number one, the ultimate goal, it has to be taking the incentive out of buying cheap, dirty steel around the world. That incentive has to go away, and that's, I think, what Dave talked about, that, you know, we're all going to have to pay. If we're all in on this. And the second thing is, as you can, by the description, we're tying together climate policy with trade policy. Trade policy is going to be climate policy, and it is going to be complicated, and how we resolve the measurements of scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3, as described, are going to be very important. But essentially, you know, those are the two goals.
Great. Dave, did you want to comment before I move on to our last topic?
Well, I was just going to kind of playing off of what John said a little bit earlier here about this monitoring. I mean, nothing really happens without enforcement, but
yes,
a fundamental thing we have to do, and I'm encouraged by this. I don't want you to think I think it's the end game. As an old bean counter, you know, not a meddler, just a bean counter, an accountant. I know the numbers a little bit, and I know what's really important for enforcement is that you have clear metrics that can be enforced. And that's why certification is important. What the SEC has proposed seems like crazy stuff, right? Where there's 1% materiality, a lot of discussion in the boardrooms of how do you comply with all these things. But the good news, even like with Sarbanes-Oxley, we kind of got used to that. I mean, as an old accountant, you know, we're still waiting for international financial accounting standards, right? Like, when's that going to happen? But if you can get certified here, like we've done with Responsible Steel at Big River, you have an independent outside body saying you're good, you know? And that's what I'd like to see all of us come together on, clear metrics that define just how good we are. And if we could prove that here in the United States, it doesn't matter if we're 80% and he's 50%, at least we're so much better than what the others are, and we can see that through a certification program. The SEC, it's a good start. It's going to take a long time to get this in place, but when you have clear metrics in terms of how do you measure GHG and make sure they're the same for 1, 2, and yes, 3, then we'll be in good shape. It's until you have clear metrics that can be enforced, do you make a difference. And there is no leadership without enforcement. And I'd really like to see the United States master this.
Right. I love that certification idea. How about AIST? You guys, could you do the certifying? You get it done. Thank you, Dave, very much. Thank you. Appreciate those comments. Last topic, and I know this is a topic each of these gentlemen is an expert on and can talk about. But we're going to try to limit ourselves so that we can get to questions. Workforce development. You know, it's an important one for an industry that is committed, invested, and focused on the future, which has been the broad theme of today's town hall. So I'm going to ask a little audience participation. I did this a few years ago. I'm just curious, and the panel can participate as well. I want you to raise your hands in response to this simple question, each of you. How many of you are baby boomers born in 1964 or earlier? These are our baby boomers, and most of the panel. How many of you are Generation Xers born in 1965 through 1980? The Gen Xers. Nice. I shouldn't raise my hand, I'm not.
The kid.
How many of you are millennials born in 1981 through 1996? Millennials, do we have some millennials? Look at that.
Whoa.
Nice group.
That's
nice
good.
group.
That's good.
Yeah, good.
Changing the world.
Well, and here I'm very curious to see, are there any Gen Zers, those born 1997 or later? Any Gen Zers? Hey, we got a few of those guys. Nice, nice, nice. So, gentlemen, I don't have to tell you that your companies are transitioning, in some cases rather rapidly, and there are two topics I want to cover with respect to the workforce. One is safety, which we always like to talk about at these town halls. It's a very important topic. I know each of your companies strive for 0 accidents That's the industry goal. But I'm just curious, as your companies are working at full steam, two things. How does growing demand affect the safety of your workforce? Does it compromise or challenge it? And secondly, does the demographic of your workforce, as you move from baby boomers even to Gen Zers, does that make a difference with respect to safety? And I know each of you could go on forever, and we've got about 5 minutes. I mean, we've got to go quick. And I have one other question I want to ask. So anybody want to comment on this very quickly? Do you think it's made much of a difference? Mark?
You can't allow it to make a difference.
Right.
Simply said.
You can't allow
it doesn't matter whether you're young or whether you're old, that there is an absolute, at least I feel, a sacrosanct obligation of leadership here and everyone in the room to be safe and drive toward that zero incident environment.
Got it. Dave?
I can just say from results, we've had all-time record profitability, cash flow, but all-time record safety, quality, and reliability. When it's based on a foundation of the code of conduct, or what we call our STEEL principles, where safety is the S in STEEL, trust and respect, environmental stewardship, excellence and accountability, and lawful conduct. When you have that as your foundation, with safety first, we've seen that no matter where you are in the organization, you embrace it.
Got it. So solid capacity utilization, changing demographics does not make it should not make a difference for sure, but it has not made a difference is what you're saying. Go ahead, Chuck.
Quick comment on collaboration, John, but calling out the challenge that all of us had in a global pandemic, having our industry associations, SMA and AISTech, to provide an immediate forum to go to for gathering best practices in dealing with something we've never dealt with before, and keeping our employees safe and keeping our operations running was extremely valuable during that time, as an example.
Perfect. Lorenzo, quick comment, and then we'll go to you, John, and then it'll be
Yeah, the scenario that you described is happening as we speak. We are all of us, I guess, are producing more because the market has been supportive of more. And we can't produce more employing the same number of people or less. We're a merger of 3 companies, and in a case like that, people would expect synergies and people leaving the company. We have more employees now than we had as individual Cliffs, individual AK, plus individual ArcelorMittal USA. This is a function of objective things that we're working on in terms of not allowing for overtime for people working 16 hours, let alone more than that. We saw situations like that. We can't just look to the other side. So when we say safety first, there are concrete things that must be done, and they are done at Cleveland-Cliffs, I assume, done everywhere, not to allow unsafe situations to prevail. Gotcha. And it goes all into our ability to attract more people. So it's very good to see how many young people raise their hands here, because that's what gives us continuity. That's what will keep this industry going the right way with 0 accidents, and that's what we need to pursue.
Great. Thank you, Lorenzo. John, last word on this?
Sure, thank you. Mark's right. We can't allow it to affect our safety performance, but I think it's important to acknowledge and accept that our work in safety is never done. Conditions change, people change. People retire, we're bringing new people on, and Mark's another interesting word. I think we'll really get there when we feel an obligation, not only for our safety, but for the safety of our colleague. And so, you have to stay focused on it, and we all say it, and similar to Dave, I'm an old bean counter too, so I hope it means something. Nothing, not production, not financial results, is more important than the safety and well-being of our people, and we just have to reinforce that each and every day.
Thank you, gentlemen. Very quick last question. We know that all of you are committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, at your companies. I know that. I know you can elaborate on that at great length. But I would not be much of a journalist if I didn't note that there's no gender diversity on this panel. Although I will say, to AIST's credit, we've had women on the panel before. But all 5 of you CEOs are male. And so I'm just curious, what are you doing in your companies? This is the last question before we move to Q&A. What are you folks doing in your companies that really enhance the role of women in an industry that I think many people feel is really male-dominated? You can disagree if it's not, but I think it's pretty male-dominated. At least it seems to me it is. So anybody want to tackle that real quick, though, real quick?
I'll be quick. Yeah, you're right. 5 males here on stage. We are a product of a society that was different, and it was worse. On the other hand, from my point of view, you look at us, I'm looking at them. I see a lot of females in the audience. And that shows that in the town hall, 20 years from now, you might have 5 females here. So we are promoting that. Yeah. It's a process, it takes time.
Thank you, sir. David.
Well, one of the things we're doing is we're making sure that we hire above availability. So if there's a 14% availability in a certain region and you're only at 10%, you need to make sure that you're hiring something like double that. And so what we do is we make sure we cast a very broad slate and make sure that we're at least at 40% with a diverse base. But one of the things that surprised me during this whole thing with the pandemic was this work from wherever notion. So one of the things that we're finding at U.S. Steel, in fact, 90% of the people are doing the hard fighting at the plants every day, but if you're in a functional support area, we say you can work from wherever so long as your supervisor agrees. So that if you have to care for children, whether you're male or female, and you're splitting those roles up, you can work from wherever so long as your supervisor agrees. So our GC, for example, is in Virginia. Our controller's in New Jersey, assistant controller in Florida. And by the way, we closed the books with no cams or any adjustments or the best ever, fastest ever. We have the head of sales in Phoenix, the head of commercial in Texas. And we're hiring people from other companies because they may not want to work in Pittsburgh or at our locations, but they can work from wherever. And as an old guy, this was a big adaptation for me. We want this culture of caring. We're killing the bro culture, and we're making sure that we have that diverse workplace.
Yeah, now your father's steel industry. Real quick.
Just I don't want the opportunity to pass.
By the way, we may hold you guys for another 5-10 minutes in order to get the Q&A in. I'm sure you're aware of that.
The Steelmaker of the Year is a woman in Barbara Smith to be acknowledged. So,
yes. And Barbara Smith's been on our panel.
Yes, and so let's not overlook that.
Great,
but
thank you.
Lots of work to do and lots of activities.
Mark, go ahead.
Well, just I'd point out that it takes time.
Yes.
Because if you went back 5 years and 10 years and 15 years and 20 years and looked at the diversity of this crowd, it would be very, very different. And unfortunately, less and less ladies would be here 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Oh, absolutely.
And so from our perspective, we're trying to at a younger age, and have been doing this for some time, trying to attract folks in. And I think the most successful program for us is our intern program, where we're able to expose SDI to that young workforce, show them that, hey, it's high tech, it's a great place to work, and just entice them in. And I think over time, we will see more and more ladies in executive position.
I just got to say, this should not be taking this much time. Ladies, come to U.S. Steel, okay? We'll move you through quickly. We'll give you those great jobs, and we want to move fast in terms of diversity and inclusion. People of color, we're there for you. Bring it.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. You know, we can spend an hour alone on this one topic, but I'm going to give George and Ron, they're going to take over on some questions, and I'm going to push you along on answers because we want to get through as many questions as possible. So Ron, or George, go ahead.
Absolutely, thank you. First of all, we will run a few minutes over, no longer than 12:15, but we got a lot of questions. We want to try and get through them as quickly as we can, and as we go through them, it'll be a little bit of a rapid fire. So John knows how to do this, but just answer quickly so we can get through them and get your comments. Okay, first question. What is the likelihood that the now infamous Steele-Managegan scenario comes to pass? Can we declare this dead, or does this idea still haunt the industry?
Dead.
Dead.
It's ridiculous. And again, we're not trying to get bigger. We're building capability. We're not interested in getting bigger. We're interested in making sure we take share, and we'll be happy to cannibalize ourselves if we're not. We are not going to destroy our industry. Steele-Mageddon was just folly.
That thing never existed in the first
It's a
place.
joke.
Never
It
existed.
hurt our whole industry. Enough said.
Never existed in the first place. The expansions that were done properly, were done to combat unfairly traded imported steel, no matter if it was in the Midwest or in Texas or places like that. So that thing is a false premise that got hyped. Never happened, never will.
The exception in China.
All right, we heard yesterday that from Steve Henderson, the
Except in
AISTech
China.
president, that steel needs energy and energy needs steel. How can the steel industry unite to support the massive DOE investment in hydrogen hub energy development that's going on now here in the United States?
Anybody?
Clean energy is necessary, and we are big consumers of electricity. And no matter what process we use a lot of electricity in our electric arc furnaces in Butler and other electric arc furnaces. We use a lot of electricity in our blast furnaces in Indiana Harbor. So our next thing will be nuclear power. We want to promote the production of nuclear power on site to make these plants independent from the grid with nuclear power that's clean.
The governor and other like-minded people, hydrogen hub right here in Ohio River Valley. A lot of discussions, $8 billion opportunity. It's big, it's huge. It is the future, and we're going to be a part of it.
Great. Chuck.
Steel companies are going to be active in it, but the technology leaders, the equipment companies and so forth are going to have to be very active in this.
Good. Next question. Yeah.
Will vertical integration into the energy sector become a hallmark of decarbonization, or will the investments needed in green electricity and green hydrogen be separate and apart from the steel industry?
Lorenzo.
Well, I have already answered that with my comment on nuclear power. And as far as hydrogen, I believe that the hub is a great initiative, and it's very specific. And then we're going to have hydrogen in the pipe. That's our hope.
I think it's going to be.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mark, and then John.
Steel companies are already investing, but not necessarily directly.
John.
I think it's going to be a combination of both. Again, to tackle the issue in front of us, we're going to need all approaches. And so I think that there will be times when it makes sense for the steel company to actually invest in the renewables. And certainly, what could really make sense, if it's in close proximity to some of our plants, we do it together. It's like anything else, you need scale. But I don't think there's a single solution here. And again, the demand for clean energy is massive. Who's to say we're going to get it first? So we might have to do something.
You hear that common theme, best of both? Think about it.
Go ahead.
All right, next question here. As an industry, what can we do to actually build a market for green steel, which may come at a premium cost? Would a system similar to the Energy Star energy efficiency label be effective? How do we create a market for green steel?
Mark?
The consumer has to recognize they've got to pay for it. And if there's a premium, it will accelerate that whole evolution.
Chuck.
Well, and there certainly are natural applications. We're developing partners already. Electrical vehicles would seem to be a no-brainer. Electrical trucks, steel going into wind towers, all those green applications would seem to be a natural market for us.
Essentially customer demand, because you've got customers like the auto companies that want cleaner steel, right?
Customer demand, but what Mark said was consumer demand, right? So it's customer, but it starts with all of us.
Yeah, good. Go ahead, George.
Okay. This question's for Mark. Yesterday you mentioned the Sinton, Texas facility is a world-class and can produce some products that nobody else can currently produce in North America. Can you please expand on this?
Well, I don't believe that anyone can produce a 84-inch wide true coil, 1 inch thick, with the toughness levels and the physical capabilities that we'll be able to produce, that the American energy pipe and tube producers are asking for today.
All right, we have another hydrogen-related question. The U.S. has approximately 2.8 million miles of pipelines, but of this vast total, only 1,600 miles, a mere fraction, are registered for hydrogen service. So clearly the infrastructure to produce, store, and distribute hydrogen does not exist. In your view, how long will it take to develop this infrastructure? Will it even be practical or affordable for decades?
Interesting question. Go ahead,
I
Lawrence.
think we will not have this countrywide solution that the question is kind of implying. We are going to have localized solutions like the hub in Ohio. So we are going to have to generate locally in a way that we can use in close proximity. And that's a much easier way to get to lay pipes and to get the hydrogen available. That's what at least we, Cleveland-Cliffs, are working on.
Good. Anybody else on the?
Decades. It's going to take a long time.
Right.
Extraordinarily expensive. Again, you got to get the cost down 2/3. A lot of work has to be done. Just when you think about when we were promised autonomous vehicles in 2021, hydrogen's ahead of that. And when will you be having your autonomous vehicle? This takes a long time to build the infrastructure. It's going to take a lot of money.
I want to ask my own follow-up on that. What does that mean for the European steel industry, who are heavily committed to a hydrogen future?
Well, clearly the impediments are storage and transportation, and it is going to take a lot of investment and time. And you're going to see, just as in the U.S. Department of Energy is going to have a huge role in gathering the consumers of this, the users of this, and that's exactly how it will be working in Europe.
The underlying cost drivers are the same, right? I mean, the issue is going to be, can in Europe you have access to cheap renewable power? That's all hydrogen is.
The transition in Europe is
But
so
again,
difficult.
it's all about the power, and is it affordable?
Germany shut down nuclear in the midst of this Russian. I mean, I don't know how they get through this, frankly. 40% dependency on Russia. They better start getting along with them or develop their own facilities, because I don't know how they get through it. They've got a much bigger challenge than what we have in the States. Much bigger. They are not self-sufficient.
Next question. What role does the steel industry have to play in the emerging lithium battery recycling business? How will existing automotive scrap recycling operations have to evolve?
Anybody? Mark, go ahead.
I think simply that it has to evolve. That's a embryonic at best technology.
Sounds like a question for Israel.
All right, we want to come back to nuclear, and we'd like to try to get the reaction from all the panelists, but is your view very positive on the use of small modular reactors as a potential green energy source for the future power of our industry.
John, we'll just run down the list. Go ahead.
I'm very much in favor. I think we have to look at nuclear. In one of our facilities in Canada, 68% of the power generation is nuclear. So I'm very bullish on nuclear, to use Dave's word.
Dave?
All of the above strategy. There is no one. You have to take multiple ends to this, and
Are
it's
you
going to
using
take countries.
nuclear at all?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Are you using nuclear at all for any of your facilities?
I don't know. I don't believe we are, but I don't know. We've got some work that's going on, but I don't know that we have any. I can't answer that.
Mark?
It has to happen. The only way the world can evolve electrically is to have a generation type of mode that is that intensive.
Are you using nuclear?
We don't generate any, but yes, we take it off the grid.
Okay.
And the grid has a lot of nuclear. So the answer to your question is yes, we do use. Actually, another thing that people don't recognize, that the use of thermal coal for electrical generation in the United States is the lowest among all developed countries in the entire world. We are less than 20% at this point. And we have been replacing coal-powered power plants with natural gas power plants for some time. We did it in the Upper Peninsula in Michigan in 2015-16, and very successfully with the local operator over there. But now the next step is really bring back nuclear to the forefront, because that's the one that can really supply needs that are really big that we have in our business, in the steel business.
Chuck, last on this?
And it has a place in the energy portfolio for sure, and the safety issues and concerns can be addressed. So I think it's in the future.
Okay, considering the increasing number of EAFs, scrap cost tends to rise. Does it sound like a good strategy to keep some BOFs running to cover the possibility of a shortage in scrap?
Well, Lorenzo, you've got both. U.S. Steel does. Go ahead. What's your thought on this?
Look, we use more scrap ourselves because it's good practice, because it's our way of doing closed-loop solutions with our clients of flat-rolled steel, particularly in the automotive sector. Our acquisition of FPT gave us a pretty good head start on this opportunity to melt prime scrap back to the car manufacturers. We had a 15% at the time of the acquisition of the prime scrap business. Now we have 20, based on our ability to get more deals from our clients. So melting scrap is not something that is limited to the EAFs. BOFs melt scrap. We are increasing the amount of scrap that we melt inside our BOFs, because that's our way to stretch hot metal, which, by the way, we use HBI to produce, knocking down emissions. So it's a pretty complex issue, but at the end of the day, scrap will be needed. We need to bring manufacturing back to the United States in order to go back to a point that we're generating more scrap, because scrap is a consequence of industrialization. So as we bring more manufacturing, we are bringing more scrap availability, and it's all positive, it's all good.
Dave, did you want to comment on the question?
Well said.
Got it. Beautiful.
Okay, before we close, do you have any comments, John? Do you would like to
Well,
ask
the only
a
thing
question?
I'm going to say is that hasn't this been a terrific panel? How about a big round of applause for these gentlemen?
No, you're right, John. This has all been good stuff, good interaction. Right. Before we close, I just want to remind that lunch is provided for all conference registrants immediately afterwards in the exhibit hall. We look forward to everybody meeting there to continue this morning's debate. I would like to thank again the system groups for their sponsorship of the town hall event. I also want to thank Centro Metal Cut and Mid-Owl for the coffee service this morning, as well as Suez for the water service. And for sponsoring the upcoming exhibit hall luncheon, we must also thank Agreco, American Iron and Steel Institute, Bogner, Calderas, and the Timken Company. And I'd like to thank John for his effort and all the, again, for one last round of applause for all these panelists along with Ron Ashburn and the AIST staff. Thank you. Enjoy your afternoon, and it's really been good.